Welcome to Behold. I'm Beth, and today Craig and I are going to take on kind of a sticky subject. We're going to talk about recreational marijuana use. Can you believe it? So today on the podcast, get it? We're just going to talk about what it's like as a Christian and how we should live our lives in light of things that the Bible doesn't directly address. The Bible never talks about marijuana use. So stick around. Here we go. Hey, Craig.
How you doing, Beth?
I'm doing great.
Are you excited about this episode?
Totally, man. What'd you expect me to say?
You're right.
I am thrilled about this episode of the podcast.
Yes.
The podcast.
Yes. But before we get to the podcast,
Yes.
let's talk about some, because you and I are involved. You're more involved than I am in Seminario Iglesias del Oeste.
Yes.
Which is a seminary down in Ensenada, Mexico.
Based in Ensenada.
Based in Ensenada, headed up by Jim and Annie Culp.
Yes.
And you and I had the privilege at different times teaching and just talk. I just smile every time I hear about this. And so just briefly talk about what goes on with that.
So we recorded over Zoom because it has to be as few, megabytes, or I'm not a computer gal.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a small file, we'll just say.
Right.
Because these are going to third world countries.
Mm-hmm.
So Iglesias del Oeste, Seminario del Oeste has sent missionaries, Cuban missionaries.
So
Cuban,
this
communist Cuba.
This is a ministry based in Mexico.
Who
have reached Cuban missionaries.
Yes.
Now go on.
The Cuban missionaries have been launched into Egypt.
Okay, these Cuban missionaries.
So from Jim and Annie, from Chico to Ensenada to Cuba to Egypt. Okay, are you tracking with me?
I'm with you.
We're binging around the map.
Yep.
They are ministering with Somali refugees.
In Egypt. By Cuban missionaries. Who have been sent by Mexican missionaries.
Right. So what does this have to do with us? We get to record these classes, and then they've bought software that will closed caption translate what we said into whatever language.
I think this first batch is going to Arabic, right?
It's going to Arabic.
Right, yeah.
So wrap your mind around that.
Oh,
if you will.
Yeah.
And we got to do it, like I did it from my office. You did it from your house.
Yeah.
And it's small enough to be put on like a thumb drive or however they're getting it to Egypt. So.
And the gospel going out. It's just amazing.
And we get to be a part of it.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It's really a lot of fun.
It's so thrilling. It's so thrilling.
And the other thing we'd be a part of is the Behold podcast.
Yes.
And the particular topic of today
is
what?
We are talking about marijuana.
Cannabis.
So,
Beth, my question for you is, when did you stop smoking the devil's cabbage?
The good news is I've never started. How about you, Dr. Hardinger?
You know what? We talked about this.
Yes, we did.
And I had plenty of opportunities in high school. A lot of my friends smoke. For whatever reason, and I don't know why. I wish I could say it's because I love Jesus so much, but it probably wasn't. I was probably more afraid of it than I never did. I never have. Mm-hmm. And I really don't have any interest in that. But because of the legalization of what's going on with cannabis and things, we as a church need to deal with this.
That's right.
And it's probably the same way the church had to deal with alcohol and tobacco and throughout the course of the years. Dancing, in movies, all the stuff that we're taboo.
Yeah, this is new, or there's a new cultural push for it.
Right.
Okay, where do we stand? Not how do we react, because we're not reacting, but we are thoughtfully and scripturally and prayerfully responding and taking a stand.
Hopefully, yeah.
So there's a couple resources that helped us. First of all, you found a kind of a statement of faith from a church up in Portland that was, it's 2 pages, but it was succinct and it was good. It was helpful to think about. But then also this book by Todd Miles, and it is literally called Cannabis and the Christian.
Yeah.
And if you've been a Behold podcast watcher, you'll remember Cole and I got to interview Todd But we didn't talk about cannabis.
No.
Which he was so thrilled to talk about something else because now he's the guy. He's the cannabis
He's the guy now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But this book was, I mean, it's not huge.
It's a quick read.
It's a quick read.
Yeah.
And the back has a full appendix full of questions and answers for pastors and parents. So if you, are a parent or you're a leader of young people, I would suggest checking out this resource.
Yeah. He writes well. He puts the cookies on the bottom shelf. I learned a lot.
Oh my gosh.
I was blown away at how much I didn't know
Same.
about the issue itself. And so I was very benefited by it.
So, Craig, can you open your Bible and show us exactly where it says, thou shalt not smoke marijuana?
Absolutely. Happy to do that. It's in the Hebrew.
Uh-huh. Have you found it yet?
No.
So what do we do?
Well, when in doubt, just say no to everything.
Okay. I heard, when in doubt, don't.
There you go.
Was what I was taught as a teenager.
Yeah.
Which
flies.
Sure.
I mean, that's good.
But we're also good at not listening to our doubts.
Right.
So then we do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we have to deal with this topic honestly, because my generation, your generation, marijuana is evil. It's a gateway drug. It's awful. It's bad.
Only losers smoke
Only
pot.
losers smoke pot and all that kind of stuff. And now that it's become legalized, it's become normalized in our culture, we have to address it.
Yeah.
And do we want to? Probably not.
Yeah.
But
can we just bury our head in the sand?
It would be easier. It would be much easier.
But not.
Yeah. But we're about making disciple makers.
Yep.
And disciple makers need to address these kinds of things. And I hope for the listeners and the watchers, we're probably not going to come away with any rock solid. Well, we might on a couple of things, but there is so much more to the topic that needs to be discussed.
Yeah,
beyond just a podcast.
Well, and Todd Miles even addresses studies and articles, and we could have spent a month just studying this, and we didn't. We spent a month, but all the other things we do as well.
Yeah.
But again, this book was really helpful, but I learned a lot. You said you did.
Yeah.
But so we don't blast our listeners just with facts.
No.
You and I both get 3 new to me facts.
Now, see, why 3? Why do you get to make the rules?
Because it's a holy number.
Why do you get to make the rules?
Because I said it first and you didn't push back. Actually, you did because I see it number 4.
I know,
cheater.
I did 4. I broke
Cheater.
That'll be a quick one, though. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's a good way to do it. I like that.
Do you want to go 1, then 1, then 2, then 2?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So am I first then?
You go first since you have 4.
Okay. The first thing, the new to me fact was, and this is not necessarily in order, and shame on me, I didn't know this, that there's a humongous difference between THC and CBD.
Yep.
And that's what's significant. In fact, probably the podcast today is we're going to talk mainly about THC because that's the potent version of cannabis.
That's what gets you high.
That's what gets you high. And so CBD is mainly used for medicinal aspects, although THC as well. But THC is the stuff that people would use to really get high.
Right.
And I didn't know that.
THC and CBD are 2 different things.
Yeah, I did not know that. And so that THC is what produces that high. It deals with the pleasure aspects of the brain. So we'll deal with that.
So speaking of the high, I didn't know.
Is this your number 1?
This is my number 1.
Okay.
The high of marijuana is unpredictable. Like in my head, I think of Cheech and Chong, like chill, kind of dopey.
You're dating yourself.
Eating Doritos.
Right?
Whatever. I don't care.
Now, okay, real quick. Ruth, Ethan, have you guys ever heard of Cheech and Chong?
Ethan says yes.
Okay.
Heard of it.
Okay.
It's them, but that's okay. It's okay.
Because they were when I was in junior high.
Well, they're lasting.
Well, I don't even know if they're alive, but yeah.
Yeah,
the idea.
you could be mellow. It might give you that effect, but it can also cause psychosis and violence. And I didn't know that.
I didn't either. That's news to me. My number 2 is, now this is what's interesting to me. A joint in my day, a joint of marijuana in my day was very, we're talking in my day is the 70s.
Okay.
The THC blend would be 1.2%.
Oh, not very much.
Not very much.
Okay.
In fact, Todd Miles would liken it to near beer, just about.
Yeah.
The potency now, if you go to a dispensary, it can get up to 30% potency with
And
THC.
that's like just smoking a joint because
That's
like if
just
you
the
do
joint.
the oils, it can be even higher than that.
Yeah. And that, I had no idea. I thought pot was pot.
Right.
And just because of engineering, because smart people
Yep.
try to find a way to make the product better
Yep.
and create a better high. Now, if you smoke a joint or you do rub oil or take an edible or a gummy, then you're looking at a legitimate high
Yeah.
that can do a lot of things.
Right. Well, you
Yeah.
could think about an alcohol percentage, like
Yeah.
when you're thinking about these
Yeah.
percentages. The
Yeah.
higher the percentage, the more potent
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, my second one.
Okay.
I didn't know how many risks there were to your cardiovascular health.
Oh, yeah.
Your heart, right?
Mhm.
It causes increased risk of heart attack. It can cause atrial fibrillation, tachycardia, which are both rhythm problems,
Mhm.
heart failure, and more. It provides no cardiovascular benefits, which was, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it makes sense because you have to inhale it, unbeknownst to Bill Clinton, apparently. You have to inhale it in order for it to
Uh-huh.
be effective, and
Uh-huh.
that goes into your lungs and goes
Yeah.
into your bloodstream.
Well, there's even like popcorn lung, which is from vaping marijuana, which I didn't know. Well,
Yeah.
I guess I got my fourth one in. Popcorn lung.
See, you're breaking your own rules. It's just not fair. It's not fair.
Life's not fair, Craig.
I know. My third is, and this is
This is the one you stole.
concerning.
I was going to use this
Oh,
one.
it is? Okay,
Yeah.
good. I'm glad I stole it. Teen use interferes with brain development,
Mhm.
and the losses cannot be restored.
Say that again.
Teen use of marijuana, all forms of THC primarily. Teen use of THC marijuana causes brain deficiency that cannot be restored.
Mhm.
In
Mhm.
fact, there was a study done by a professor at Duke University, and any kind of study like this has to over multiple years. And within teens, a constant use of marijuana, their IQ dropped 8 points,
Mhm.
and it doesn't recover.
Yeah.
And
It does brain damage.
it does brain damage, and that's concerning to me.
Mhm.
That's very concerning
Yep.
to me because
Well, and young men tend to be the primary users.
ones, yeah,
Mhm.
the primary ones, yeah.
So my third one is there's a connection between cannabis and psychosis. And referencing the book, there was lots of study that marijuana use increases the risk for psychosis in general and schizophrenia in particular. One study demonstrated that using marijuana 5 times or more increased the risk of psychotic disorders by a factor of almost 7, while another showed that teenage marijuana use tripled the risk of late onset psychosis. The list could go on
Mhm.
and on.
Mhm.
It messes with your brain, but it messes with your mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you're talking about brain damage where your mental capacity of,
Yeah. Yeah.
sharpness. And this is talking about more like your mind where your ability to even function in
Mhm.
reality is distorted.
And
And that can be permanent also.
and what's interesting is that news has not gotten to the mainstream of society.
Right. No one's
just
talking
hasn't.
about that.
No one's talking about that. I mean, when you hear primarily from marijuana users, it's just like alcohol.
Mhm.
It's no different than alcohol. It's no problem. It's not a big deal. In a lot of ways, they're right.
Right.
In a lot of ways, they're right. But in a lot of ways, they're wrong
Right.
with that. It's not something to be messed with that.
Right.
Can I do my fourth one? And I didn't know this.
Okay.
I'm blown away by this, but primarily in California, probably on the West Coast, because Oregon and Washington kind of
Yeah.
lead the way with
Yeah,
this as well. But on the West Coast, there are cannabis churches.
What does that even mean?
Cannabis churches. And unfortunately, I'm not going to say his name, but a guy who grew up here at Arcade
Uh-huh.
is a primary voice in the
Oh.
cannabis church. And,
Oh, yes.
and so that's not something I think we should be proud of, but
No.
that's the reality. But the interesting thing about these cannabis churches, you'd think, oh man, they just worship Jesus, they get high on the Lord, and and you go to their websites and they're talking about just having this new plane with the Lord and all this kind of stuff. You look at their doctrinal statement, there's shamanism, there's Buddhism, there's Christianity, there's Judaism, all the major religions combined into one. And so when we say cannabis churches, it's not even Christian. It's not
Right.
even remotely Christian, but they're out there. They're out there.
It sounds like people who are looking for an excuse to make this addiction or problem okay in their life.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah.
Okay. Since we like threes,
Okay.
3 things everyone should know about marijuana or
Okay.
cannabis use.
All right. Am I going first? You go first.
I'll go first. Okay. Oh, and look, my number 3 is blank. So, oops.
Oh, you didn't finish your homework.
I didn't finish my homework.
Your own homework that you issued.
Sorry.
That's-
Craig.
that's-
I'm like literally blushing right now.
I hate to
And
call
Chris
you out.
is laughing at me.
I hate
you know
to call
what?
you out, B, but
I can't-
you didn't
I
finish the
didn't
homework.
finish. Can I give my 2 answers?
Well, you'll probably think of something else.
Can we cut this part out?
No, this has to stay. Okay, Ethan,
Okay.
get your finger off the knob, Ethan. Okay, all right.
Full confession, sometimes I screw up. Here we are. You're welcome. A live look at Beth being embarrassed and
It's-
screwing up.
It's a new high.
For you. My high is when Craig says, you were right, Beth. But anyway,
It's never going to
it
happen.
doesn't happen very often. All right, number 1, there's no way to know how you will respond to marijuana.
Yeah.
It's not worth the risk, right?
To use it recreationally.
Yeah, we're talking about using marijuana in this arena to get high.
Yeah.
Using
Right.
marijuana recreationally,
Yeah,
right? It is not, in my opinion, of never using it.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know how you're going to respond.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you going to respond violently? Is it going to screw up your mind so much that you have to be hospital? Like, there's so many risk factors
Mm-hmm.
that, in my opinion, it's not worth it because you just don't know how you're going to
Mhm.
respond.
Yeah, mine is, and I didn't know this, but it's interesting. I think everyone should know is that marijuana is indeed addictive.
Yeah.
And I know that the rub the last 10 or 15 years, especially with the onslaught of the lobbyists
Mm-hmm.
promoting legalization of marijuana, I said legalization of awana.
I want to firmly,
Okay,
I
all
want
right.
to
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And legalization of marijuana it's not addictive. It's not addictive.
Right.
And the truth is it is.
It is.
It is addictive. Not as much as tobacco or alcohol.
Right.
I mean, that's a true statement. Alcohol and tobacco are far more addictive than marijuana, but marijuana is indeed addictive, and it's more so in male adolescents,
Mm-hmm.
which goes to what we were talking about
Right.
earlier. You know, and that can be destructive.
Yeah.
Any form of addiction always destroys,
Yeah.
and so we've got to be careful about it.
Okay. I remember what my 3rd one is. I just didn't write down my page number. Ha ha.
You found it.
I did. But
Yeah.
we're going to go back to number 2.
Okay.
Number 2, we live in a culture of health and vitality, right? You can't
Yeah.
turn on the TV or scroll through social media or put on a YouTube video without a commercial or a plug for health and vitality. Like, I'm trying to be a healthy
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm.
Marijuana doesn't fit with that. But also, in the life of a Christian who is to submit willingly to Jesus, choosing to be high does not fit with following him.
Mm-hmm.
It puts you out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're out of control, how can you follow Jesus?
Mhm.
How can you make decisions? How can you live your life in a way that lines up with his word if
Yeah.
you don't really know what you're doing?
Yeah.
If you're out of control.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. My second one that everyone should know is that cannabis or marijuana is a good provision given by God.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a plant.
Yeah.
And it was created for us by God to do this, but like everything else in life, something good can be misused.
Yes.
And the issues that we're talking about is the misuse of that.
Right.
But there's a good side to it as well.
Right.
And because there are all kinds of medicinal reasons for THC and CBD.
Even hemp.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
the fiber hemp is
Yeah.
strong for rope and
Yeah.
bracelets and
Yeah. But even like with the oils, I've used CBD on my knees. It didn't help,
what?
but I've used it. It's an oil that you put on your.
I'm just teasing you, Craig.
Am I going to lose my job now?
I don't know. Is using CBD a fireable offense?
I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
I guess we'll find out. You know what? It's been really great working with you.
Well,
I didn't finish my homework, and you use CBD.
But someone from Arcade gave it to me, and so I thought, well, I'll try anything.
Yes.
And,
yeah, if your knee's hurting bad enough, right?
And it didn't do anything. It didn't help at all.
Okay.
But there are THC is used for cancer victims to ward off nausea.
Increase appetite.
Increase appetite. I mean, there are good reasons for this. But like you said, if it enhances our thought process, if it enhances our behavior and changes our behavior and thought process, then we've got to pause and say, wait a minute, why is that?
It like diminishes.
It diminishes it. And so what is the purpose of that then to do that? Hey, I just want to get high. Why? Why is it that you just want to get high? Why is that?
Right. Okay. My third one, I thought I found it, but I didn't. But in this book, it talks about using marijuana, kind of stunting your motivation and stunting your ability to remember things. And so then you're not really remembering how you got things done. You're not motivated to do them. It's like this vicious cycle of not being motivated to do something and then not really remembering how that worked. So it just kind of can turn you into like a slug.
Yeah.
Not to be, I don't mean that in an offensive way, but we can all imagine someone who has no motivation and can't remember why they want to do things and why they should do things.
Yeah. And that is the issue with this. And that's why, for example, if you're there and you've been prescribed THC or CBD and the doctor says, yes, take this or use this to ward off aches and pains and nausea and you're a cancer victim, all that kind of stuff, then by all means, this is a provision given by God. And it's probably like any other narcotic that's out there.
Well, I was thinking of opioids. We could kind of say the same thing.
Yeah, I mean,
because you and I both had surgeries and had to take those mind-altering pain relievers.
They are and I get why people get addicted to it.
Sure,
I really do because, I mean, you love everything, and everybody loves you.
And nothing hurts.
Nothing hurts, and so I get why people take that. But if our prime directive here on earth is to be disciples of Jesus Christ, we got to have our wits about us. We just do. And I think that's very, very important. That if it influences our disciple making in a diminishing way, then of course that's sin.
And we could say that. We could evaluate other things not mentioned in the Bible. Does this diminish my disciple making?
Yeah. Food for me. Alcohol, not a problem. Tobacco, not a problem. Food for me is my high. When I'm depressed, I eat. When I'm happy, I eat. When I want to celebrate, I eat. And that's why I go to the gym, so I could eat.
Right. Right, yeah.
And so it's not to look stealth. It's so I can eat what I can eat, what I want. And so for me, the struggle is not with pot. It is with food. That's the issue for me that's addictive. And we've got to be very careful for this.
Well, and food is good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
We need food for our health, right?
But I'm not gorging on broccoli. I'll tell you that right now, unless they make a broccoli Pop-Tart. Huh? No? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of Arcade Church, would you do me the pleasure of making Pastor Craig a broccoli Pop-Tart so that I can give it to him on the next recording of our podcast? I would love that. That would make my week.
Well, you can give it. I ain't going to eat it, though.
Hey, you said if they put it in a Pop-Tart.
Well, I did say that, didn't I? Shoot. That's right. Oh, well.
All right. Things everyone should know. You know
Mhm.
what? Let's go through. Sorry, I didn't mean to whack
It's all right.
you. Your number 3 is a little robust. So can we go through that real quick?
What do you mean
In
by
a
that?
good way. I mean that.
Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa,
So
Craig.
so like everything else in life, and this sounds so unrealistic because most people don't go through this thought process, but we do have to think. We've been given minds.
Mhm.
And so when there is something that is going to enhance the way that I think or the way that I feel,
Mhm.
possibly in a negative way or even in a positive way,
Mhm.
we have to ask the question, is this really beneficial for me to
Right.
do? Is this, I mean, thinking through this. And so there's a series of questions that and Todd puts in his book that I think are really, really good. And the first one is, am I fully persuaded that this activity is right?
Hmm.
Am I fully, am I doing this because I want to check out
Mhm.
of reality?
Mhm.
Then that's a problem.
Right.
Because if you check out because you don't want to face reality, guess what? You're going to do that more and more and more and more.
Mhm.
And that's true of food, that's true of alcohol, that's true of tobacco, that's definitely true of pot.
Or television or
Yeah,
shopping or
absolutely. Yeah,
sex or fill in
absolutely.
the blank with.
Paul writes in Romans 14, whatever you believe about these things, these disputable things, keep between yourself and God. Blessed is the one who does not condemn himself by what he approves. But whoever doubts stands condemned if he eats, because he's eating is not from faith, and everything that is not from faith is sin.
Hmm.
And so
When in doubt, don't.
when in doubt, don't. If you're not sure, then
Mhm.
don't.
Mhm.
Because if we believe what the Bible says about sin,
Mhm.
if we really believe that, then all sin is destructive.
Right.
It ruins us.
Mhm.
And yes, that's where we trust God. But I can hear the pot smoker, I can hear the drinker, I can hear the smoker, and they're all saying, "Hey, listen, I can manage it. I can manage it." Yeah, now you can, but there will be a day when you can't.
Well, what do you say? Sin has a series of unintended
Unintended consequences.
consequences.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it always does. It always
Mhm.
ends up
Mhm.
that way. Another question to ask is, can I practice this activity for the Lord?
Mhm.
And again, I don't hear a lot of Christians asking that question, but the text of Scripture tells us to. For example, again, in Romans 14, verses 6 through 8, whoever observes the day, talking about special days,
Mhm.
observes it for the honor of the Lord. There's a group of people that believe, hey, we should be worshiping on Saturdays. And others are like, no, we need to be worshiping on Sundays. It kind of goes back to our show from last week.
Yeah.
All these people have these preferences. And Paul is just simply saying, whatever you're going to do,
Mhm.
make sure it's for the Lord,
Mhm.
for his glory, for his purposes. Because he goes, whoever eats, eats for the Lord, since he gives thanks to God. And whoever does not eat, it is for the Lord that he does not eat it, and he gives thanks to God. So are you able to give thanks to God for this? Can you do that while you're high?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Because you're just really glad that you're high.
Yeah.
And another question, does this activity promote righteousness, peace, and joy? If it's not, then it's not something Christians should do. Again, Romans 14, for the kingdom of God is not eating and drinking, but righteousness, peace, and joy. So the kingdom in which we live and the master and the king who is master over us produces peace and joy in us. If we are finding ways to do that ourselves, I've got to produce my own peace, which cannabis does.
Yeah.
I've got to produce my own joy, which cannabis does for a time.
Right.
Then we've got to ask the question, am I really living for Christ or am I living for myself? And those are questions that we as Christians, they need to be like breathing.
Right. We should live thoughtful lives, right?
Yeah.
We should live lives where we are almost putting ourselves through a filter of
Yes.
daily, moment by moment, or as we come to decisions
Yeah.
like, am I going to be a recreational pot user?
And unfortunately, the question that many people ask regarding pot or anything else is it helpful for me? If it's helpful for me, then it must be right.
Right.
And Paul is discipling us. No, that might be a question, but it's not the primary question. The primary question is, can I be an observant, disciple maker for Jesus Christ? Does this reflect him as my master? Or does this reflect me as my master?
Right.
And those are two different questions. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go down to, I did this part.
Finally. Man.
Craig, I love working with you. This is so fun.
I think you're saying that facetiously, but that's
I'm
fine.
not. I'm being
gonna take
true.
it. I'm going to take it.
Okay. A takeaway for Christians.
Yeah.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I would say this. It's in the way of the question I have for pot smokers or for drinkers or for gym rats or for foodies is this: what are you trying to mask? In biblical counseling, we talk about this all the time, is that porn is not the problem, it's the solution. Alcohol is not the problem, it's the solution. Any form of addiction is not the problem, it's a solution. And what I mean by that is that people who are addicted to alcohol, they look at alcohol as solving something.
Right. Or relieving them of
Or
something.
relieving of something. The same with porn. And we're going to talk about gambling in a future show. All of those things, we do those things and we're addicted to those things because we're convinced that they solve something.
Yeah.
And so what I would ask for anybody that is suffering, and I do mean suffering with addiction, is what is it that addiction masks? What is that addiction in your mind solves? Because the truth is, Jesus Christ wants to take position in that. He wants to be the solution to that.
Right.
And when we are addicted to porn, when we're addicted to pot or to tobacco or to alcohol or to food or whatever, when we are addicted to that, we look at that as the source of solving our problems. And Christ is saying, that's an idol.
And it's a cheap substitute.
It's a cheap substitute. I want to have that position in your life where I'm the supplier of rest. I'm the supplier of peace. I'm the supplier of joy, not that blunt or not that glass.
I'm sorry. Oh, I thought you were making a pun. Like you're saying not that blunt. Like don't be that blunt. But you're talking about an actual
Blunt.
I'm sorry.
We're having
I'm
we're having
sorry.
an adult conversation here, okay?
On our podcast. I'm sorry. I thought you were trying to be funny and I was laughing at your joke. And I'm like, oh, wait.
Okay. In Beth's defense, she warned me before we even started this show. She said, I'm a little giddy. And so
I'm in a silly mood. And I've tried to tone it down, but here it is.
you've done so well until now.
Until now.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Like you're being so serious and I just derailed you. That was super unintentional.
But see, that's why
I'm
everyone
sorry.
loves you.
Because I derail things.
Well, that's all right. We all need that.
Okay. So you have this question. What does this activity, whatever it is, doing that God has promised he will do?
Yes.
That is like a oof moment right there, as Kelly Burns would say.
And have you even tried? Have you even tried to simply trust in God? I don't mean try God.
Right.
But even God himself says in Malachi, put me to the test. Try it out. And see that I will be faithful. And I think that's where the community of believers really helps.
Yeah.
Is that we are equally messed up people. We are a confession society. And so we deal with whatever it is that we think is our salvation. And Christ is coming saying, hey, I didn't die for nothing.
Right.
I shed my blood so that the penalty of sin would be away from you. And I've given you my spirit so that the power of sin would not be over you. And so test me, and you will find that I'm faithful.
And boy, is he.
He is. He is totally faithful. Yeah. How about you?
Okay, so a takeaway for Christians is, does using marijuana recreationally help me to be sober-minded? Does using marijuana recreationally, again, cause me to use my heart, soul, mind, and strength to the glory of God? I think you have to ask yourself those questions. Being sober-minded is, am I able to clearly think and clearly follow Jesus, in a cloud of marijuana smoke? Probably not.
Yeah. And two, it may be that after listening to what we've been talking about is that the Yabbit monster will rise up. Well, yeah, but what about this? And yeah, but what about this? And we basically have not talked about the medicinal use
right.
of cannabis.
Right.
And there are many wonderful uses for that,
Mhm.
of which I would never tell
No,
people, hey, don't bother because it's evil.
right. You can take an opioid, but you can't
Yeah.
use
Yeah,
THC.
you
I
can,
wouldn't have that
yeah.
argument.
Go ahead and take Oxycontin,
Yeah.
but don't take that.
Right.
You know, you can take Norco, but don't take that.
Right.
You know, there are medicinal uses for
Mhm.
cannabis that
Right.
is so wonderful.
That's really
This-
not what we're talking
No,
about.
we're not
We're talking
talking
about the
about that.
recreational, let me get high,
Yeah.
smoke a joint or vape or gummy or
Yeah.
for the purpose of recreationally.
You were
or
going to make some brownies.
shoot,
We talked about that. I forgot about that until now.
you forgot.
I-
You've been using marijuana,
Well,
Pastor Craig.
I don't need marijuana to forget. Let me tell you, I don't remember anything.
All right. Well, our whole point is like, I so desperately want to be a fervent follower of Christ.
Yeah.
I want to spend my life beholding him. Does marijuana help that? For me, the answer is no.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go out and go to a shop and get some pot and get high.
Yeah.
For me, that would go against my conscience.
Yeah.
Go against the Holy Spirit's
Mhm.
calling to me as a
Mhm.
follower of Christ. So you have a behold passage.
I do.
And I have two because
Okay.
I broke my own rules.
I don't even know who you are sometimes. I don't know. Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Or do you want to go first?
I don't know.
I'll go first.
You go first.
And then you can read your two passages to my one.
Okay.
Well, as you know, in Paul's letter to the Corinthians, his first one, there's so much about eating and drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, the church must have just been
A
going
really
through
fun
it.
church to go to.
Oh, yeah, because they would walk out of a temple and there'd be a food truck with
Yeah.
the meat that was offered to the idols
Right.
and stuff. And so they were constantly bickering about the dietary laws, all that stuff. And so Paul, he just wisely puts an end to it. And this is a passage that if you've been around the Bible for any period of time, you
Mhm.
know it.
Mhm, mhm.
But in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31, Paul just flat out says this. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God.
Mhm.
So whatever that is, there are all kinds of disputable things out there about eating and drinking.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, whatever you decide to do,
Mhm.
make the motive for doing that the glory of God.
Right.
Not your own glory,
Right.
not your own feeling, not your own high, but the glory of God. And that would be a good place to check your life
Yeah.
in any kind of
Yes.
practice, not just pot.
Right.
Okay, what are yours?
Okay, I've got in Matthew 22, verse 36, Teacher, Jesus, which commandment in the law is the greatest? He said to him, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and most important command.
Mm-hmm.
So is whatever I'm doing using my heart, soul, mind, and strength to the glory of God,
Yeah.
right? That should be how I live my life.
Yeah.
I wish it were always true, but I do try to live my life in a way.
And the neighbor aspect to that too.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even read
Yeah,
that part.
yeah.
The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't know how you're going to respond to recreationally using marijuana, you're not sure how you're going to treat your neighbor.
Well, and there are people that are more prone to addictive behavior
Yes.
than others.
Mhm.
And so it's vital to understand that I might be able to handle it. Most people think they can, and they find out they can't.
Right.
And so we've got to be careful. Is it loving our neighbor to be involved in these kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things?
And the next one, I don't remember if I've brought this up on the podcast before. So Romans 12, 1 and 2 was kind of used as a gotcha verse when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, but no one ever brought up Romans 11, 33 to 36, which is just a hymn of praise is how it's titled in my Bible. So there's this hymn of praise about how amazing and awesome and God glorifying how God is just beyond our imagination. And then you get to 12:1.
Mhm.
Therefore,
Mhm.
brothers and sisters, in view of that, in view of the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is good and pleasing and perfect will of God.
Mhm.
Therefore is there for a reason.
Yeah.
And because of how awesome God is, I can present my body as a
Yeah.
living sacrifice. And what does that look like? Not conforming to the world, transforming my mind so I can so I can discern the good, pleasing, and perfect will of God.
And-
It's hard
and-
to do that when I'm high.
Engaging the mind.
Yeah.
Engaging the mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For the glory of
Drunkenness
God.
can't do that.
Right.
Highs can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we'll get some comments on this one.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Speaking of comments, you can comment below. I know
Yeah.
Spotify has a place for comments. YouTube has a place for comments. Please comment. If you want to maybe continue the conversation or you have some questions or maybe a testimony of how God has delivered you from
Mhm.
addiction, we would love to hear that. Email us, behold@arcadechurch.com. Remember to subscribe to our new YouTube channel. The link will be in the show notes. Until then, live your lives in a way that honors God because he is worth it.
Amen.
It is worth following Jesus.
Mhm.
He's worth it. We love you. Have a great day. See ya.
See ya.